Right now is conservative columnist, author of In Trump We Trust, a pluribus, awesome. Ann Coulter is joining us right now. Ann, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely, good to be here.
So what are you expecting? Can these tensions ease between the U.S. and Germany? What do you think will be important to watch between the two in this meeting?
Well, I'm sure Trump will be charming. He always is. But they do have very serious disagreements. And it's strange that much of the media seems to, with this obsession with NATO, see Merkel as more of an ally and Putin as the enemy. Well, right now, the real enemy of the United States and all of Western civilization is radical Islam. And Putin is obviously a much better ally in that fight than Merkel is. She's inviting all of these Muslim migrants in. They have to have training programs for the refugees. Don't rape the German girls. You'd think that they'd be able to control themselves. Hey, everybody, just for the next 6 months, try not to rape anyone. And they can't do it. They can't do it. She's not only destroying Germany, she's destroying all of Western Europe. The whole idea of the NATO alliance was to oppose a communist Soviet Union bent on world domination. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So we really are set in this, as Obama ridiculed and the entire media ridiculed Romney for one stupid remark in the 2012 campaign. This is really a 1980s Cold War mentality that bears no relation to what's happening right now.
Yeah, Romney obviously was right in his assessment a couple of years ago. Let me ask you about immigration. President Trump is pushing ahead with this.
Actually, he backed off that.
Yeah. He backed off of it.
He retracted that. Like a week later, he went on Wolf Blitzer and said, Russia, what I meant by Russia being our '1 geopolitical foe is they sometimes oppose us in the UN. That's far from the '1 geopolitical foe.
Wow. Why would he do that?
Because he's weak and he lost.
Because it isn't.
Yeah. Sorry, Ann.
That's what Obama quite successfully made fun of him for, and John Kerry at the Democratic National Convention, saying, what, Al-Qaeda isn't? ISIS isn't? Our '1 geopolitical foe is Russia? I don't want to live in Russia. I don't want to live in any other country. I wanted to live in America. But Russia has been dealing with the Chechenian Muslims and lots of Islamic terrorism for centuries now. They warned us about the Tsarnaev family, the Boston bombers, and our government officials ignored them. The fight now is with Islam, which openly says they're going to come into our country, our various countries, the West, infiltrate and turn us all Muslim. This is the new Soviet threat. There is no Soviet threat. Ronald Reagan won the Cold War. But now suddenly the New York Times, which forgave Stalin for the Ukrainian famine and the gulags and the show trials, no, they can't get past, this Russian leader they're suddenly upset about.
So what do you make of this travel ban pushback then? The president's pushing ahead with the revised travel ban, vowing to fight these rulings, but it's two federal judges, Hawaii and Maryland, that halted his order. What do you make of this pushback?
He's absolutely right, and he may not want to do it, but I really think these district court judges need to be ignored. It's completely outrageous what they've done. There is no precedent for what they've done. They are basically eliminating the presidency. We have 3 branches of government. They have different roles, and Congress and and the executive branch, they have complete control over who comes in and doesn't come out of the country, as the Supreme Court has said for more than 100 years, starting with the Chinese exclusion cases. I had a column a few weeks ago that went through to the point of tedium, and I didn't cite all of the cases, about 10 cases, Supreme Court cases saying it is 100% the prerogative of the president. It's an extension of his role as the commander-in-chief and dealing with foreign policy to decide who gets in and who doesn't get into the country. For these courts to say, yes, but it affects our citizens. Well, okay, then a decision of the commander-in-chief to go to war affects their citizens. Some of their citizens may sign up, and they could be killed. That surely affects their rights. So can some district court judge someplace in the country say, I'm sorry, the commander-in-chief may have declared war, but we can't go because I'm a district court judge? The courts have been outrageous and gotten out of control for a long time, and I think the only way to stop them is to recognize the constitutional framework, which does not put a district court judge above the President of the United States. In fact, the President, I mean, there are three co-equal branches, but the President is the only branch where the entire authority of that branch is invested in one man, as opposed to hundreds and hundreds of federal court judges. One little dinky district court judge is going to overrule the President?
Yeah, but why isn't he doing that then, Dagan? I mean, you know, if the federal judges can overrule, then how come that's not what's happening? I mean, they've shut this down.
Yes, I mean, it's a bold step. It's been done before. The reason there is this sort of judicial tyranny isn't because the Supreme Court says, and district court judges are more important and they can overrule the decision of a president. It's because it's a scheduling matter. They have the last word. And it's always been considered, you know, sort of, you know, a dramatic step, certainly, for a president to say, but they've done it before, to say, as who is it? Is it Andrew Jackson who said, okay, the Supreme Court has ruled, now let them enforce their ruling? No, they're co-equal branches, and the president would be completely within his rights to say this decision is insane. I mean, what if you had a crazy judge? There are all kinds of decisions a judge could issue if they can issue this decision. Right. There is no precedent for this.
Brian Brimberg.
Ann, are you happy with the way the president and his administration are selling this to the public? There's some sense that the public is maybe getting less interested. They don't feel like this is really helping them. Is he selling this the right way? Does he have to do something different?
If you mean the travel ban,
yeah.
No, I think the public is with him. That's why he won the election. And I must say, all of the public approval polls of President Trump, I keep, you know, tweeting out, according to the polls on Election Day, he had, I think it was a 6% chance of winning Michigan, an 11% chance of winning Pennsylvania, and so on and so forth. I mean, these public opinion polls, apparently you need to add about 30 points to the public approval of Trump.
There's some problems with the polling, because I think people do have a problem saying out loud that they support the President of the United States right now. But I don't know if it's 30 points. It might be 6 or 7. But I mean, we've seen things come down. We've seen his approval ratings, even if it's inflated by 30 points, it's still come down by 6 or 7 points. So do you think he's doing a great job of selling everything that he's doing right now?
Yes, I think he could use a little more help from congressional Republicans. One thing I was hoping that Trump wouldn't have to deal with, I mean, the things that I and I think most people who supported Trump really like about him are, well, his instincts and his love for America and not being wedded to the particular talking points of the Republican Party. He's what I always thought the Republicans were. But, for example, on bringing jobs back, trade, immigration, building the wall. One thing I thought, of all the things the president would not have to deal with is the repeal of Obamacare. I mean, these congressional Republicans have had 7 years. Right. They can't come up with a free market plan. They should just roll it out, pass it, and send it to him for his signature. That isn't really his bailiwick. You know, how to have a free market in health insurance, which would take exactly one sentence of the bill. There shall be a free market in health insurance. That right there takes care of 90% of Americans, and then we can have, you know, the rest of the bill deal with the welfare cases.
Well, it doesn't look like they're going to get the votes for the plan on the table now from Paul Ryan. Do you think these guys are going to be able to work this out and get the agenda executed in the timeline that they're expecting? And that is health care plan out by Easter, tax reform plan out by August.
I'm getting a little pessimistic, particularly because of what's happening with Obamacare. Again, 7 years they've had. And just as a general matter, I've noticed that it's oddly difficult to explain the free market in an area where we haven't seen it for many, many decades, i.e. health insurance. I mean, we're living in a country where we buy everything else on the free market. Shoes, flat screen TVs, iPhones. Yeah. How about car insurance? And you always feel like you're talking to an old Soviet lady explaining how she's going to get bread if the government doesn't provide it.
And we don't need Congress. It's because we have single payer through Medicare, and even President Trump says, I'm not touching Medicare. That's why.
Well, yes, and I agree with Trump. People I mean, Medicare may be a Ponzi scheme, but people have paid into it. And I think it would be outrageous to cut back on Medicare and Social Security. Americans have been paying into it their entire lives, but going forward, and for non-Medicare cases, i.e. everyone until age 65 and everyone who buys his own health insurance, let me buy health insurance on a free market. I don't want to have to pay for, well, your kids to stay on the plan until they're 30. I don't have to pay for maternity care and pediatric dental care and gambling addiction and psychological counseling and sex change operations, and I can't buy that. We don't need Congress. I mean, if Congress wrote a bill on hotels, they'd be, don't worry, we're going to make sure every hotel room has a bed and a TV. No, I think the free market can figure that out.
Yeah, well, we'll see if they can figure it out. Ann, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
Coulter joining us this morning. Fox